Greetings and welcome to September the 4th. It's a Wednesday, and this is time for our daily Devo. Our Charles Dickens portion of this devotion is from David Copperfield, another well-known writing of his. It is entitled Humility. Humility. There are expressions, you see, Master Copperfield, Latin words and terms that are trying to a reader of my humble attainments. Would you like to be taught Latin? I said briskly. I will teach it you with pleasure as I learn it. Oh, thank you, Master Copperfield, Uriah Heep answered, which will become the name of a band in the 70s, 60s. I am sure it's very kind of you to make the offer, but I am much too humble to accept it. What nonsense, Uriah! Oh, indeed, you must excuse me, Master Copperfield. I am greatly obliged, and I should like it of all things, I assure you. But I am far too humble. There are people enough to tread upon me in my lowly state without my doing outrage to their feelings by possessing learning. This is a day to be remembered, my Uriah, I am sure, said Mrs. Heep, making the tea, when Master Copperfield pays us a visit. I said you'd drink so, Mother, said Uriah. Excuse me. I said you'd think so, think so, Mother, said Uriah. I felt embarrassed by these compliments, but I was sensible, too, of being entertained as an honored guest, and I thought Mrs. Heep an agreeable woman. Mr. Uriah, my Uriah, said Mrs. Heep, has looked forward to this, sir, a long while. He had his fears that our humbleness stood in the way, and I joined in them myself. Humble we are, humble we've been, humble we shall ever be, said Mrs. Heep. We know our station and are thankful in it. Wow. We know our station and we are thankful in it. Now some thoughts from Gene Fisher. This humorous, self-deprecating scene from David Copperfield is not representative of what the Bible means by humility. Still, many people share Uriah and Mrs. Heap's misunderstanding that being humble means behaving in an overstatedly servile way and thinking that others are good and they themselves are not. First and foremost, humility means believing that we are nothing when compared to God. In Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 8, the Apostle Paul says, your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Christian humility means yielding to God and not acting with arrogance or out of selfish ambition. By practicing this sort of humility, we can react peacefully when others confront us, face criticism with grace, apologize sincerely when needed, and be courteous in all situations. Rather than a sign of weakness, this is proof that we are gaining power and strength in Christian humility. Sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? We are gaining power and strength in Christian humility. It is when we yield to God that we truly become strong. Matthew 23:12 says, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled. And he who humbles himself will be exalted. Again, Matthew 23:12 is that passage. Pride and humility are important themes in the scriptures. You see what pride does right in the opening chapters of the book of Genesis. When Eve, taking of that fruit, the one fruit in that whole vast garden of plenty that they're told not to partake of, not to eat from, she does. And all because she falls for the lie of Satan that says, once God doesn't want you to eat this, because he knows that when you do, you'll be like him. And she does it, and then gives it to Adam. That's pride, to think you can be on the same level as God, that you have the same authority in your life as God has, that you can do what you want to do, kind of thing. And the Bible, on a number of occasions, says God resists the proud. Because in a way, pride is making yourself an idol, or making an idol out of yourself, to think you don't need God, that you can handle things yourself, do what you want to do. And but then our folks here, Uriah Heep, in our David Copperfield section this morning, they've gone just the opposite. They belittle themselves. We are all made in the image of God. And all we need to do in our humility, well, it's like the parable Jesus tells of the Levite that's in the temple praying. He's boasting about himself. I do this, I do that. And at the end of his prayer, he looks over at this tax collector, this sinful person who's there in the temple also. And he says, I thank you, I'm not like that person. Such a prideful attitude about himself. Meantime, this man prays his posture is in an unworthy type manner, and he asks for forgiveness. Please forgive a sinner like me. I'm not worthy. God reaches down and lifts those people up. He exalts them in his time. In his time. Don't exalt yourself. God is not in favor of that, will not respond to that. But if you will humble yourself, he rejoices in exalting you and lifting you up into his presence. Pride is deadly in our spiritual condition, because our pride and our spiritual condition resists God. Don't need help. I got it covered, God. I'll let you know if I need you, God. And if you take that approach, the day comes when you tell him you need him, and he says, oh, am I supposed to listen to you now? That's basically the premise of Second Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. And here's the kicker I think a lot of people miss. The next verse says, next part of that says, then I will hear from heaven. It infers that right now, because of the way you're living, the choices you're making, the deaf ear you've turned to me, I've turned a deaf ear to you too. We've got to humble ourselves in God's presence. Humble ourselves to cast our care on him. Humble ourselves to yield our lives to him. And then he gets his way. And when he gets his way, it's always the best way. Blessings to you today.